Cool. Thanks for having me. I will start sharing my screen and then introduce myself, a little bit of background, and kind of take you through the talk today. So let me share screen first. Infinite loop. Cool. All right. So my name is Brandon. When I got approached to kind of do this talk, I thought about something. I'm like, there's so many things that I could talk about. What are the things that I want to talk about? Kind of as my journey, my career, and I've been really focused on kind of building great products lately. And so I thought this would be a good kind of conversation to just share some of the things that I've learned and observed kind of over a decade building products. The talk today is going to be how to build a great product. A lot of it started from my journey building products, going through Y Combinator about almost like a decade. It's been a while, and kind of the whole theme with why some people want. And so I'm gonna share some insights that I have, but kind of first to introduce myself, a little about me. So kind of career-wise, I started my early career in capital markets, finance, and corporate strategy. Worked on Wall Street a little bit, worked for a few other kind of entertainment companies in the finance and corporate strategy space. But I've always been super entrepreneurial. Started my first company when I was like 9, helping old people take out their trash and fill up their water bottles, and they were paying me to do that. And ever since then, I've been just identifying problems and trying to solve them. So whether it was in college, trading stocks and investing into kind of parties and concerts, whether it was investing into a used car dealership right after college, and starting just several different type of entities like dabbing here and there. I kind of took my first full swing into entrepreneurship in the mid 2010s, where I left corporate and started a company in kind of beta in hospitality payments. So we got venture funded, moved to San Francisco, built a team. That was great. That company failed. It was like our first kind of win and failure. So scaled the team to about 20 people, raised a few million in venture funds. And from that, because we were serving the hospitality space, kind of had our first failure with COVID. COVID kind of closed every single bar, nightclub, and restaurant that were customers of ours. There, I was head of product and growth and co-founder. Second company, but kind of through that failure, learned a lot building teams and products. And went into my next venture, kind of again solving a problem that I had internally with our company. As we laid people off, we ended up building kind of a first of its kind voice AI agent. It kind of morphed from a call bot to a voice AI agent. The whole premise was to help people connect to like busy government services during the pandemic, helping them with EDD and pandemic unemployment assistance. That product grew very quickly, and then within a year and a half got acquired by private equity. And so we were kind of on the forefront a little bit of building like a voice AI agent as products, as the technology improved, going from like Twilio to Vappy to Blend.ai. And then most recently had a company called Bible.ai. We were building AI underwriting software for banks and credit unions with the premise of helping them underwrite thin file car buyers. And so kind of taking this combination of different learnings, and then I spent the last 6 months just advising several different companies in product and growth areas. I've learned a lot about product and met several different founders and met a lot of people who have different ideas and thoughts around what it's like to build a product and what it means. And so I'm share that with you guys today. I just have a general passion of solving problems and building products. And I like to just try to build something that impacts people and lives matter. I think I have a moment where I was building our first company. It's in 2017. I remember this moment. It's 2017. I'm headed to a venue to do a sale. Trying to close a venue to get a sale on our software. And what our software did for Quest was it allowed people to become members of their favorite places. And that membership, you can like connect with people and like-minded people, and you have access to different perks and things like that at the venue. And so I'm in San Francisco. I'm on the way to a venue sale, and I'm on the train. And I remember sitting next to somebody, and they have our app open. And this person had no clue who I was. I had no clue who they were, but they were like using our app because they were a member somewhere at some restaurant or some bar that they were there. And I was going to talk to them, but I wanted to observe what they were doing. But it's just like a great moment, like building something and watching something kind of serendipitously happen on this train ride while I'm like in founder mode, trying to hustle and bustle. And I kind of have this like moment where I'm like, oh, okay, the thing that I'm building actually matters to somebody, and I'm able to see it live in person. So I think those moments kind of always fueled me. So I think some of the things that I've learned is like what defines a great product. I watched a TED talk about a decade ago. It was a long time ago, but they said something really unique in this TED talk, and the kind of the key thing about building a great product was that it was remarkable. And what remarkable meant that it was like the product was good enough for somebody to make a remark about it. Like they used this product and they had to tell somebody that about this product that they loved, that they liked, that they're using. And that's when you know you kind of had something, that the product was remarkable. And so like in business that I built, it was like, what's that kind of viral coefficient? When one person joins or starts using it, or even in B2B, right? Like a company starts using it, do you have like a natural kind of unsupported by sales or marketing growth aspect there? And so you can kind of give this overwhelming demand where like people are talking about your product, sharing the product. It's not supported by your sales and marketing efforts. And you're getting inbound leads. I think the other thing is that it grows in spite of company flaws. This is a learning that I had when I was in YC. We had the Reddit founders come by and give a talk. So we're on this big dinner. It's about 100 founders at the dinner, and we're listening to kind of the stories and like the kind of the behind the scenes conversations that these founders kind of endured in the early stages. And so they're talking about, you know, the early stages of I've Reddit, how they're trying to like get the momentum going and all these different things, and how like every stage the product grew. But they're talking about all their flaws as a founder, like they sucked at this and they made mistakes here, and like they had no systems and they just really didn't know what the heck they were doing. Yet the product grew every single month, year over year. And they had founders had to leave and come back and take care of their parents who were sick, and they just felt like their product grew in spite of them. And that's like another key of a great product that you'll see, is that like when the product is valuable and useful, it tends to grow outside of how great the company is and how great the founders are. Um, Product is everything. You can have the best team and the best operations and systems and company processes, but if your product sucks, it won't grow. And you can, and the inverse of that is very true. You can have like an okay team, and you can have a like very bad processes and poor management, and kind of just things can be in disarray and all over the place, and the product can still grow if people love it. And like the telltale sign of PMF, there's this great blog, and I do this work a lot now with some companies that I work with. As I stand in with as like a fractional head of growth and head of product at a few companies. And so one of these work is like, do you have product market fit? And there's this great talk, an article that I encourage people to read, how the superhuman people who developed the superhuman email app, their kind of process methodology around, do you have product market fit? And their thesis is that when you do a user survey of all your customers, and if more than 40% of your customers say that they'd be disappointed if they couldn't use your product, that means you have something. It means you have product market fit. And so kind of that goal is to survey customers and ask them like, would you, if you know, this product doesn't exist, or you couldn't use the product, would you be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed at all, right? That survey should come back, and 40% or more should be very disappointed. That means you have like a great product. So something that I do all the time, something that I've done continuously in business that I built, to see what the kind of users think. So building a great product. Let's go into, I think the first step that I always do, and I've done it every single company, is kind of understand the market risks, right? Does the user need what I'm building? I can do this so many different ways. An example is, it could be very manual, right? Like just when we were building Quest, I would literally go to a city. I would hop on like one of those electric Lime scooters. I would ride around to find like popular restaurants and bars and clubs that were there, like by like if there was lines, and I would go up there and I would talk to people about the product that we're building and see if they actually liked what we're doing. I would talk to restaurant owners and bar owners, and before I would even build anything, and understand what their needs are. The market size is super important too, right? Like it doesn't matter whether it's big or small, but I think the thing I think about is like, what's the ROI? Like what's the cost going to go into to build this market? And is it like an existing market where I'm disrupting an incumbent, or is it something that's like going to grow over time? So maybe the market's small, but like it'll grow over time. A famous Airbnb story is they got turned down by investors all the time because the market size was small. And they didn't see the market for it, but it was a growing market. And so sometimes you're building something that creates a market, sometimes you're building something that disrupts a market. The disruption markets are a little easier to see. Sometimes the creating markets are harder to see. One of the things when I talk to some more than I like is they don't spend enough time with customers. I think the thing that is most important when it comes to building a product is developing these like unique user insights and spending time with the customers. Um, uh, become like a lot of PMs and product people become overly reliant on data, especially when you think about scaled organizations. So a lot of organizations that we tend to work with in the big corporate, they're publicly traded, right? Like the PMs coming to this, they get into this space where they're doing a lot of data analysis. And because there's so much data, it's so easy to be like intrigued by it and enticed by the data because you have so much data. Like in the early stages, you don't have data. So you don't have a lot of data. So you're forced to go out and talk to customers. And that's why there's a lot of innovation happens at that level. The thing I see a lot of times with larger organizations is that that doesn't happen because it's so easy to just pull up a dashboard and look at how things are trending and where they're going. We tend not to talk to customers enough. And kind of some bad things happen. Either you start optimizing and building things that aren't like what they're using your product for, or as a product person, you kind of lack that key skill set. So spending time with customers, you get those user insights. Like these keys or insights that can be very different and counterintuitive. I think the thing when I think about feedback and the feedback that we get is like I had to learn and recognize as a product person that feedback is a gift, but like gifts, they're not always useful. And so part of that discernment is like, talk a little bit about discernment down is like developing that discernment around what feedback is useful and what feedback isn't useful. And part of that just part of that kind of status is like asking the right questions. I used to ask a lot of questions like yes or no questions. Like, what do you think about like, do you like this feature here? And they're like, yeah, I like it because I think asking kind of open-ended questions is super important when it comes to product discovery and understanding the products. And be careful of not leading people down a path that you want them to go to, because it's very easy to come with these kind of pre-lived consumption, like understanding in our minds about what the product should be and how things should be, but how do we move that biasness in there? And so asking kind of very general open-ended questions and letting the person talk is, I think, key when it comes to spending time with customers. And then the last thing I would say is like, and again, this kind of goes really, this is really telltale in larger enterprises. Like watching people use the product is so important. We had this thing called UX Cam, and with UX Cam, we would watch customers. I would do 10 or 12 a day where I would watch customers use our product, and they would watch their screen and things that they would touch and interact with. And you would be able to see where they got confused on the product, where things weren't intuitive on the product, things that didn't make sense, better layouts, screens that were taking too much time loading, or button placement and all these type of like touch points, features that were used that we thought were used, the onboarding flow. Some of these learnings that we got from observing the use. And the other part, and a lot of insights too. Like I remember an insight when we were building Quest. And so, we're building Quest. This is a membership platform. People are going out. They're starting it for memberships. They're going to bars, nightclubs, and restaurants, socializing people. And we're now trying to build in more social components to get people to connect with like-minded people. And so, I have my man hat on. And so I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm having my intuition about the product. And I'm not realizing some of the biasness that I have around the intuition of the product that I have, that I'm building. And I realized that like, one, our team has a lot of men on it. we're hiring some women on the team, but I think we lack a little bit of experience in that side. And at the time, almost most of our 56 or 57% of the women, people that joined as members in the beginning stages were women. Kind of shocked us at the time, but the insights were unique. When we're building features around socializing and connection, we were saying, when I was talking to a lot of the members, especially the female members, safety and security were such a much larger concern than I thought. And so we're like, hey, you know, what if you like somebody to see your profile or send you a message? And they're like, hey, that makes you feel unsafe. Can you guys still see my screen? Oh, hello, I can't hear you. Hello? Okay, I'm gonna share again. Okay, I don't know what happened when I timed out. Okay, we're good? Okay. And so one of the unique insights that I did, if we just look at the data would say everything is going great. People are sharing the platform. People are connecting with each other. People, it's growing, right? Revenue is growing. And so now we're like asking people what features we want to. We have this hypothesis around features that we need to do around sharing and connecting with folks. But we're thinking with our man head, with our man brain, and as a man, coming from like a male perspective, we're not as concerned sometimes with security online. And so one of the insights that we got was like the number of women that share the location with their female friends everywhere they go. And at the time I was like, I didn't know so many women shared their location with a friend. That's something that I, as a man, I've never done before, right? And so now I have this insight around, okay, what are we need to make sure that we ID verify every single person that comes on the platform for safety and security reasons. Everybody needs to be verified, and we need to communicate that verification in the platform and the product. Things like that are kind of the unique insights we got from talking to customers that the data wouldn't necessarily show. And it helped us avoid a lot of pitfalls. So I think watching the people use the product and actually using the product in enterprise and B2B, this happens so much where people don't use the product. The employees and the PMs and people that work there don't ever use the product because they're building the product for a different use case in daily lives. I think using the product often is also, you get tons of insights. Kind of going back to the customers can be different. I know a lot of people on the call, they work in corporate, and they're probably building products serving enterprises and other customers. And so I think part of building a great product is recognizing who you're building for, and that customers and users can be very different people. In my last company, we had this kind of triangle of customers where we're building underwriting software for auto loans. Our customers are banks, but our users are dealerships and people getting car loans. And so how do you balance the need of that? So like where a customer can be a manager or an executive, you have to sell the software into. The user might be an employee or a worker that actually uses the product. And like, how do you balance that need between how do you prioritize features and what the value proposition is? Because they can have different incentives. Like the software we're building for the bank, their incentive is like safety, risk aversion, and charging the most profitable interest rate that they could. Whereas the person getting an auto loan wants to be able to do it quickly, very transparent, and they want the best rate they can get. And the dealer who's the one using our product to help the customer get an auto loan, transparency might not be in their best interests because there's a lot of money to be made with the lack of transparency. There's, kind of slowing down the process can help them kind of sell on more products and services. And so how do you balance all these things to make sure you can do that? The thing that we keep in mind is that the customer must love the product. The users must like the product. And so like our North Star and the person that we have to think about when we're building the product is the bank. Like the bank must absolutely love this product before we can go any step further. And so And the feedback we might get from a user might be counter to what the customer wants. And so, and this, you'll always run into this building a B2B2C product where the customer and the user is completely different entities. And sometimes you'll run into this in enterprise software. But balancing those needs is kind of remembering that the customer must love the product, the person you're selling to, the manager, the executive, or the enterprise. And the user, maybe the employee, the worker, just has to like it. They don't need to love it because they're the person you're selling. And maybe you can get them to love it over time, but at least initially, you must let the customer love it. The other thing is like staying on top and understanding what the unique value proposition is. So this thing called simple is key when it comes to unique value proposition. We have this thing called the mom test. Like, talk to your mom about the product that you have, an idea. If she can't understand it, it's either one, too complicated, or two, you as a builder don't understand it enough and are probably overcomplicating it. And if you can't communicate it very simply, then you for sure are probably overcomplicating building it. I heard the founder of TikTok. He gave a really simple explanation about the value proposition of TikTok, and I was like, I never thought about it like this. So you have like the typical social networks like Facebook and Instagram, and they're about connections. They're about how do you share things amongst your network, amongst your friends, right? And stay on top of what your friends are doing. And that's great. You tend to see the people who have the most friends have the most connections and tend to be the most users on those platforms in the early days. TikTok's founder was like, his main value proposition and his thesis was, if you were to go on TikTok and you were to share content, that he would make sure that somebody sees it, whether you had no friends or not. If you were to publish content on TikTok, he would make sure that some person saw that content, and he would let you know that some person saw that content. Not if it didn't matter who you followed, if you followed no one. If you just got on there with 0 followers and no one, and you knew no one, and you published content, he would make sure that one single person saw it. And if that person engaged with that content, he'd make sure another person saw it, and he'd make sure another person saw it. And so it created this like different architecture around what it means to build a great product and the value that it was delivering. And it's very simple to understand. It's like, hey, on TikTok, if you publish something, one person it'll guarantee that one person sees it. And if more people engage with that product, somebody likes it or commented, that it was shared to more people. And so that's why you have this high virality and viral coefficient on TikTok. But it's a very simple concept to understand. North Star, this can be like making sure you following your North Star is sometimes the hardest thing to do because, as you guys know, working in big companies, like there's all these internal priorities and there's all these different things that become distracting, and you can start optimizing for the wrong things. You can like start optimizing for like your process and things like that, and kind of forgetting why people love your product. And this is kind of a big reason why, if you look at the S&P 500 or even publicly traded companies, founder-led companies tend to outperform CEO managed companies or hired senior CEO or managed companies that aren't led by the founder. And that's typically because the founder becomes mission aligned. And when it comes to optimizing for profitability or growth or short-term capital market metrics, that if they aren't in alignment with why people love the product, it's easier for sometimes like an MBA CEO or a manager to go with what the short-term metrics and the short-term KPIs are versus staying in line with the original mission of the company and what that means. And so staying focused on why people love your product and remembering that and that being the North Star all the time, building towards that is very, very important. The thing that I think about and I see in kind of great organizations versus ones that aren't so good when it comes to product is like this outcome-driven approach versus like this process-driven approach. Managers and kind of like a environment where the process is so heavily emphasized and managed, it does slow down the outcomes and sometimes gets in front of the outcomes, and it makes you easy to disrupt because we are very much in an innovate or die economy. And so kind of this approach of like building prototypes to test theories and get buy-in internally. Like, how do you build something really quickly to just kind of show what the value could be to win buy-in? And also put something in front of users at a small scale so they can understand and you can get feedback of what the value could be. Shipping fast is important, and kind of iterating more and optimizing less. So like kind of building this culture of being outcome driven and not process driven. That can definitely be harder in certain it was harder to do this when I was building for banks because there's so much regulatory and compliance related things that have to happen. And the bigger that you are, the bigger company that you are, the harder you come like this kind of Titanic. And so you're not this speedboat. You need to like easily change direction around things. You become like this big boat where you need to have a lot of alignment in order to change things. And that's okay. I think, how do you take a small team and build something really quick internally to buy-in? So like maybe the person you're trying to get buy-in and build something really quickly for isn't the end customer, but it could be the stakeholder where you can show and have them actually look and feel it and get buy-in that way. I think this kind of building prototypes, shipping fast, and optimizing less and iterating more approach always wins, whether your company is big or small. And staying and making sure as like a manager and as a leader of the organization that you're outcome driven and not process focused. I don't care how you get to the outcome. I want you to get to the outcome as long as if you're in like a regulated space, you're not breaking any rules, but being very outcome oriented. And also that last is kind of one of the things is like avoid feature creep. There's always this like theory of this next feature is going to be the reason why we increase revenue. Is going to be the reason why users love us. It's going to be the reason why like our product is successful. Is the reason why I'll get a promotion. Is the reason why like it's like this new feature is going to be the thing. And one of the things that I kind of realized in great products is that less is more. You kind of want to simplify and prioritize things. And you should be kind of removing features from your product, not as often as you're adding them, but more than you are maybe comfortable with. And like one of the things, like if you're not like removing things, if you're not adding things back that you've built on your product, you're probably not removing enough and simplifying it enough. And so we kind of built this term in San Francisco. I heard this term. I can't remember who said it, but it like stuck with me, which is like kill puppies. And so like the reason why he said kill puppies is that like puppies are adorable and they're sweet. And it's kind of like a product. Like you put your love and a lot of patience, time, and effort into a feature or a product. And it may not be working as much as you thought it would be, or it might not be like this hit thing that you thought. And so like it's easy to just like let it live. But what you should do is kill it. And it should be hard to kill. Like it should naturally feel hard to just like, hey, that thing we put the last couple of months effort work in, we spent 40, 50 hours, stayed late at night to build, and it's not working, we have to kill it. And that could feel like killing a puppy. And so he came up with this phrase called kill puppies. And so it's a phrase that we use a lot, oftentimes, and I use a lot when I'm listening to product people talk about this product or this feature, or this thing they're kind of promoting, and it's not growing the way they want it to grow. And so you have to kill it. And it should feel like killing a puppy. It's hard. So I put a picture of adorable, colorful puppies there to drive it home. There's a blog, Hacker News, and about 2013, this guy wrote a very great blog about building a great product called Slava. His name's Slava. He's worked at a few as a product manager at lots of different companies, and so he has this kind of feature prioritization thing that was really great, and I implemented it in a lot of my companies. And so this is like, how do you make sure that you're building the right things and not getting distracted by the wrong things? So what he did was he kind of put features in 3 buckets. Game changer features. So this is the reason why people want to use your product. This is like the reason why they would buy your product. And this is typically 1 to 3 features. Most of the time it's 1. Sometimes it's 2. Very rarely it's 3. If you think you have more than 3 game changer features, you probably don't understand your product or market well enough. But most of the time it's 1, sometimes 2. features. And these are the features you spend a lot of time with and get right, iterate on and get feedback on. The other kind of feature set is showstopper. So like this is the feature, the reason why somebody would buy your product, but if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't have it, they'll definitely say no to it, right? And when you're building products, you've kind of faced this kind of challenge a lot, where you're building a product and you get some early feedback and you're saying like, oh, this is great, this is awesome. But then you have like 5 or 6 different customers. They all kind of want different things. They're kind of like, hey, well, if it had this, you know, if you add this to the product and we really need this integration or we really work well with this. And a lot of times that's just noise. Like if you optimize and make sure that the game, like your game changer is very strong, then a lot of times you can move past that. But I think too many people put features into the game changer bucket, not the showstopper bucket. And a lot of times there's too many features in the showstopper bucket, which is not the distraction bucket. Like the distraction bucket is like, this is not a must have and it doesn't move the needle. And so putting your features in these buckets in this kind of framework is the right way to approach product. And your game changer should only have a few, your showstopper should only be a few, and most of the other ones will be distractions. And so the kind of decision, once like we've identified kind of what features are game changers. So like your game changer feature should be like unique value proposition. The reason why people, like if you were to ask somebody to describe your company, they would say a phrase, and that's the game changing feature. And there would be kind of like the think about the showstopper features just like good enough. Like they shouldn't be optimized, they shouldn't be great or remarkable. They should just be good enough. Because if you're making a showstopper feature remarkable or like putting too much work into it, you're like wasting, it's like bad ROI. So anything that's like a showstopper is just whatever the minimum basic thing is. Heck, if you can build an like pull something off the shelf and throw it in there, do that. My decision framework about what to build in each of these categories is this. Kind of, you want to focus on the things that have a high impact, low cost first. You want to, things that have high impact, high cost come second. I think sometimes we flip these two, which is the low impact, low cost. Sometimes we'll tend to prioritize low impact, low cost things above high impact, high cost things because we're scared of the cost. And impact is always the main driver, no matter what the cost is. And so if you have a few low cost, low impact things you can do, and there's like this big, high impact, lots of resources, maybe money and time things you want to put on the back burner because you want to get a few things out, that's typically a bad way to approach things. And then you don't want to be doing anything low impact, high cost at all. The other thing to be to understand is like, what risks do you have and what risks are you facing as a product on a product and business side? There's kind of like 3 categories of risk that I think about that I've seen is product risk, technical risk, and execution risk, and understanding where your product lies. So that way you're not optimizing for the wrong thing. I was talking to a startup that just raised a seed round, and they were building a like a task tracking, personal task tracking application, right? So it's like this gamified task tracking software that helps people stay on task and get things done they say they're going to do. So they're building kind of community and gamification in it. I'm talking to the CTO, and he's talking about optimizing his tech stack and making sure he's using the right code base and team structure and all these things. And at the early stage, I was like, you have a kind of execution risk company, not necessarily like a product, and a little bit of a product risk, never a technical risk. Technical risk, like a product risk company is typically very innovative as far as like, or I give the question whether people actually want to use it or not. So people already use task tracking apps. And so there's less of a product risk, like, oh, that market exists. You're trying to make sure that you're doing a better version of it. There's something groundbreaking, like people aren't using your app because it's like groundbreaking technology. Like you're not OpenAI, where the the technical risk is the main component. If you're using artificial intelligence and it's not working, then no matter how beautiful the product is or how well you execute as a team, your product is dead. And execution risk kind of can fall in both buckets, but sometimes when you like the market already exists and there's not new technology, a lot of companies fall into this execution risk where like, are you guys building, shipping, and doing things right? And so that company was in this execution risk where technical debt can be great, actually encouraged at an early stage of building a product, because it means you're moving quickly and you're iterating fast. And so trying to optimize the code base to make sure you don't have any mistakes, everything runs smoothly is the wrong thing to be optimizing for in the beginning stages of product. When you don't have a product risk or technical risk company, you have an execution risk company. And so making sure that that CTO is aligned on that. And so now it's about, okay, how do I optimize my organization for speed and iteration as opposed to like code base and architecture and who's doing what and things like that, would be the wrong prioritization to focus on. And so understanding kind of where your product and company falls in this bucket helps stay on track of like that North Star, and what you should be doing and how you should be optimizing your business, your team, and the outcomes. And so going to the team, like you want to build a product in your organization. So as managers, as leaders, we want to empower, trust, and support those. Part of that's like hiring the right archetypes for a company at each stage, right? And also understanding kind of where the product is. And so kind of your pre-product market fit, product people tend to be very innovative. They need to focus on speed and empathy. So a lot of speed, like just moving things very quickly, and if mistakes happen, it's okay. If you're moving fast, you can make up for them very quickly. And very high empathy, right? Like very close to the user problems, and being able to put yourself in that user's shoes, in that customer's shoes, and understand that pain point, like you're facing the pain point. And a lot of founders and people who build products and early stage products and kind of 0 to 1 leaders, they're able to either empathize directly, but like your ability to be successful kind of building a 0 to 1 product is directly correlated to the level of empathy that you can have. At product market fit, kind of a core PM empathy is also key as well. But also your ability to develop strong intuition around the product now that you've kind of been close. Growth, you're focusing on process improvement. So not necessarily scale just yet, but okay, we have these things, the product is growing. How do I improve processes? You're heavily relying on data and intuition. And then scale is very data heavy. And you're trying to optimize for efficiency. So while like at the growth, and I think sometimes people get confused what growth and scale means, and kind of misplacing process improvement with efficiency and thinking about it like from a growth is about making things easy. That was like a mentor of mine. He used to be the chief growth officer at Instagram. And he said this quote to me, and it always stuck with me, about growth is about making things easy. And so whenever I think about growth, I think about what's the friction in the way of the growth. Because by the time you're thinking about growth, you should have key product market fit indicators. Like you shouldn't be thinking about growth before you have product market fit. If people aren't using your product, you need to spend more time with them. And you want to get 10 customers that absolutely love your product before you can think about growing. So once you get to the growth side, a lot of that stuff to be flushed out. You should be focusing on process improvement. And with scale, it's like, okay, now how do I get the most bang for my buck? So growth can also be growth can have some negative ROI in it, and that's okay because you're like overspending to grow because people love it. So your whole goal, and that's kind of the whole venture. One of the like venture models is like, if you know absolutely that you have PMF, then throw whatever you can at to grow. And that means it might not be super efficient, but it's quick and it's fast. On the scale side, now you're optimizing for efficiency. So a lot of times you see companies grow very fast, once they become public. Now they're trying to be very efficient and cost conscious. I think talent wise, I love to win. I've seen the best people have high agency, low ego. And so whenever I hire somebody and they're working, I want to hire kind of high agency, low ego people and get out of their way. So again, it's not over optimizing on processes and trying to structure them too much. I think a lot of people have their way of working, and if you trust that person, you support, and if you support that person, then you know that they'll do well. So I think we want to make sure we hire high agency, low ego people, and then just get out of their way and let them do what they do and trust what they do. And if you hire competent people, they'll figure it out. I watched a Steve Jobs clip, and they asked him what is one of the things that he's learned, like the growth thing that he's learned building Apple. And he said that he took a while to think about this. When they asked us, it was like a long kind of awkward pause, but you could tell he kind of really meant what he said when he responded. He said that he learned to take a longer outlook on people. Early Steve Jobs was that person that hired people, and if they didn't do right, he fired them. So he's really kind of quick to fire. And over time, he realized that if he worked with the people, like he hired them because they were talented. And so though he wasn't getting the outcomes that he wanted from them, that if he just worked with them a little bit more, that he can make them that kind of super employee that he wanted. And that oftentimes that he saw when he did that, the ROI was much higher than trying to fire that person and find somebody else. And so he took a longer outlook on people. And I think that's what they do when we hire high agency, low ego people and kind of getting out of their way. It's like letting them learn, trusting that process, and supporting them along that process. I thought about this and I was thinking about like, kind of what are the 3 components that people that like great product people need to have? And it's like kind of a mixture of data, intuition, and taste. Understanding data, intuition, and taste. So like a good PM, like a good product person understands data. Like they're able to analyze data and make data-driven decisions to build products, to optimize products, to grow products, like that, right? But you need to have a level of intuition to be a great PM. And the only way you can get intuition, again, is by spending time with users and kind of aligning yourself to that problem that they have, and having high empathy. And that can allow you to have intuition to where like data is very reactive. So when you're looking at data, you're reacting to the data and you're solving problems. That's like high intelligence, but there's a level of wisdom that comes with intuition to where you're able to foresee problems before they come, and build things that people don't even know they need yet. And so you get these great aha moments where you're on the cutting edge and the forefront of things. And those companies tend to be market leaders because they have high intuition, and they become product leaders. Kind of the exceptional product people have taste. Taste is a little harder to develop. It's something kind of you can develop a little bit over time. A lot of times, some of these PMs have it. The way I kind of think about taste is like you have the data of the intuition. Now you have to kind of build this thing, and the smaller the gap between you building the product right the first time versus having to iterate is like that gap between how much taste did you have. I think about taste like, you ever see somebody dress really, really well? It might not be your style, right? Like you see somebody, they're well dressed, and it might not be your taste. It might not be like something that you like, but you can appreciate it because it's tastefully done. So even if like the product isn't to your ideal or standards, you'll still use it because you enjoy it and you appreciate the taste that it was. Like for myself, I was like this is like me and Apple and Android. Like I'm a kind of a nerdy techie. I like the control of things. And so I was always in like the Android bucket of phone usage. But I always appreciated iPhone. Like I always appreciated the kind of taste aspect that it had. And even though it was kind of a little too simple for me, and I feel like it was like a phone like my grandma could use, and I like kind of the customization and kind of open sourceness of Android and the way I can customize it. I appreciate the taste. And I think eventually I became like a Mac person, because everything was such tastefully done. There's cohesiveness to it. And even though it wasn't my style, I understood the level of taste that went into the product. And so I think those are kind of like, if you have these kind of, you want to look for these kind of 3 building blocks in it. Data is very easy to analyze and hire for. Intuition and taste are a little harder to do. And in order to hire based upon that, you as the hiring person and the manager and the leader have to have a little bit as well, so that way you can recognize it when you see it. And so I think always working on that level of empathy, you had to develop intuition, and then just recognizing great taste if you don't have it is good. And that just like taste is something you need to like understand by just being out in the world and exploring and seeing things and exposing yourself to different things that might not even be a fit for you, just trying different things and being a little bit more open. Kind of sort of kind of wrap this up, I think about strengths and kind of going back to the team aspect, that like there's a few different strengths that are highlighted depending on kind of where you're building. So you start to see like kind of data being a key component of deep tech and dev tool products. I'm like B2C and B2B software have to leverage a lot of intuition doing that because people are using it. Whereas like deep tech and dev tools sometimes don't have like a front end to it. So there's like a UI component that's missing and a UX component that's important. Consumer apps are some of the hardest to build that are successful, and that's really because they have like taste is super important on the consumer side, and taste is hard to quantify and hard to get and hard to learn. And because consumers are very fickle, and a lot of times they also don't know what they want. Like you ask 100 people what they want, they'll give you 100 different answers. Like you really have to have great taste in order to build something in the consumer space, which is why like, a lot of companies build B2B and B2B2C products. Whereas like just straight B2C, you have higher churn, consumers are very fickle, they can leave anytime they want to. It's hard to lock people into a contract. So you have to have some really great taste in order to build consumer apps. And we think about like the biggest consumer software companies and software products, whether it's physical or software, whether it's in bits or atoms, those people that build those companies tend to have great taste. And they're less reliant on like what people think and say in the beginning because it's coming from a place internally in taste. All right, wrapping this up, just some kind of key takeaways that I think about when I've observed when it comes to building great products. I think, building products people love, so they can't live without it. The quick way to understand this is like survey your customers and see if 40% or more say they would be disappointed if they couldn't use the product. Your product is very simple, 1 or 2 lines, but basically like your mom can understand the mom test. Ask your mom, tell your mom about this product and see if she can describe it to you or understand it. You want to develop strong intuition at the basis component, like spend time with your users consistently, develop that intuition. Build low ego, high agency teams, right? And then ship often, right? Like get things out, ship and cut often. So prioritize outcomes over rigid processes, and don't be afraid to remove features, like remove things, cut. If you're not adding things back to your product, you're probably not cutting enough. And those are some of my like high level takeaways over a decade in building products. And thank you. Let's build products people love.
All right. No, that's great, Brandon. Thank you. There are a few questions in the chat. I'll read those out so they'll end up on the recording.
Yeah.
But I do have one question. It's kind of a nerdy question. Anytime I see somebody doing a presentation that's not in PowerPoint, I always have to know what did you use for the slides for this?
Yeah. So AI is making things efficient. I use this app called Gamma app.
Just Gamma?
Yeah, it's called GAMMA app.
Oh, cool.
And so it's really great. I can kind of like outline and put all the copy and kind of an outline, right? I can upload it to it and then it'll create slides around it. And then you can just easily edit the images and text and kind of move things around. But it'll save you a lot of time when it comes to making decks, especially ones that are low leverage, right?
Yeah.
Like if I was making like a sales deck, I'm trying to sell like, a corporate employee, I wouldn't use Gamma app. But like for some of the low leverage things, for sure, you use Gamma.
No, that's awesome. Okay. So we got the first question from Yan Fei. So it looks like there's maybe trying to sell into governments. If you have any experience there, but how would you make a good fitting product for the government service where the the product would be considered by the residents of the city. They'd be like the end, the ultimate user, but you're having to sell it into, an agency or a city department, to make the sale. Ultimate customer is,
The government.
the residents, or the user is the residents, and then the customer that you're selling to, who makes your writes your paycheck, is the government. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So this comes down to approach. What I would do, and kind of I had to do this before, and so I'll give you an example of what I did before that worked. A lot of times there's a disconnection between customer and user. Like the government agency might think they know what the residents want, but the residents have something in different, right? But at the end, their goals are aligned because the government wants to serve the community properly. And so one, understand what the government wants and what the residents want. Now, the residents are the ones keeping the government in charge, right? And so you have to make them happy. And if you make them happy, then the government will love it. My approach to this would be to survey and talk to the residents before you sell to the governments. This is something that I did. When we were trying to, at Bible, we were selling to banks, kind of like governments, highly regulated, lots of compliance, long sales cycle. And there's a disconnection between what the executive management team wants and like the dealership manager and the person buying a car wants, right? And so before I went to that sale to close our first bank deal, I found out what dealerships they work with. So for you to be like, what residents live in that community, and very manually went and talked to the dealership owners, talk to customers, right? And so now when I'm having my presentation, I'm giving them accurate surveys and data that is shown around what they love and what they want around the product, right? And so it takes less of they can't argue with the data. And so it's saying like, hey, the people would actually spend money with you and make more money or whatever. You have more sense of heart if they had these things. And we know that because of the conversations we had with this, and this. And so I think as much, when you're selling to these big enterprises and companies, as much data you can get from their customers before you have conversations with them, the better, because you'll probably open their eyes to a lot of things that they don't know about it, right? And I can also imagine that the reason why you're selling to a government in the first place is you've built some product based upon a need that you saw that they weren't serving. And so if they weren't serving it beforehand, which is why your product exists, then they also lack the insight. Your job is to go out there, find the insights locally, and then provide those insights to them so they can't argue with the data. Because everybody can go in there and argue with opinions, but if you come in there with data, then they'll be way more open to it. And then you can draw alignment between the needs of those.
Nice. All right, looks like there's a question from Silas Jefferson. There are, I think this is going back to the slide that had product risk, technical risk.
Yeah.
What if you're at a company that's like has a mix, and they don't just have one product; they have a mix of products, or how to optimize and balance what you develop?
I would say that one, your product team when you have like multi products, you should have a little specialization in that. So like if you're a leader and so you have a bunch of different products reporting to you, right? There's a level of agency and trust you must have when it comes to who's on the ground floor doing it. And if you don't have that, you have to get your hands dirty and kind of build it yourself. So if you have this kind of multi-product approach, there's not a lot of companies, unless you're like Microsoft or something like that, right? That has like a product risk company, a technical risk and execution risk, like product base. It's a very, very rare. I think I would try to, and depending on how high up this person is, I think you have to make a decision as far as be realistic as far as what your product vertical is, because a lot of these things are verticalized unless you're like the chief product officer at Microsoft. You have to kind of worry about everything, right? But a lot of times you're working just with AWS, or you're working just with Teams, or you're working just with right? And so Teams is very much a product risk company. AWS can be, if you're working on the AI machine learning division, can be a technical risk company. I think making sure that you understand what vertical you stand in, even though it can be multiple products. Now you're more so ranking which high impact, which is low impact, which products have prioritization over that. So it's less of like what the risks are about the product, and like your kind of decision tree around that. Decision tree should be going back to that other slide. This is a game changer. This is a showstopper. Does it matter? at all? And if it's one of those two others, is it high impact, high cost, high impact, low cost? Like, and that's going to be a decision tree you can kind of work through of where you should spend your time.
Lewis had a question on, I guess, a part, and I forget the context, but you're saying, once you get to 10 customers, and I forget what
that you love, like
the ... but is it like 10 B2C customers or 10 B2B customers?
Are you talking about when it's appropriate to start like thinking about growth?
That might be, I think that was the slide that we're on for that one. Yeah.
I would say that like, when do I know that I'm ready to grow? I would say there's not sometimes a lot of an exact moment that I'm ready for growth. I think the thing that I try to look at is, am I getting some inbound? Like the viral coefficient is important. In B2B, that can definitely be prevalent. But like, I think you want to see utilization. So like if you're building a product that people need to use every single day and they're not using it every single day, then that could be a sign that your product's not super important. So like focus on those 10 customers and get them to use it every single day before you start adding a third, 11th customer or 12th customer, if you know that you have a daily usage product. So one is understanding who you're building for and the kind of common utilization patterns of the product. So if it's like something they use once a month, like maybe you're building an accounting product and it's really important during close process, right? And right now they're not really heavily using it during the close cycle. They're using it a little bit, and optimizations there. But if they're using it for the close process every single month, then time to scale. So I think part of that, and then also the survey is important. Like, can they live without it? I think part of that is like, don't focus on growth until you know that the people who are currently using it would be disappointed if you didn't have it. If they're not, then you still have a little bit of work to do there.
All right, this is excellent. On one question or observation, and then question from Michael Potter on the surveys, there's people will tell you what they want, but say they like, I want healthy snacks, but if you put a bowl of healthy snacks and unhealthy snacks in front of them, they'll go for the unhealthy ones. Any way to tease out or mitigate those types of behaviors in surveys, or what do you think?
Yeah, so there's a difference between like a feedback and a survey. I tend to ask less open-ended questions and like opinions in surveys, and ask more direct yes, no, multiple choice. So I pigeonhole them. So doing a survey, I'm not asking, hey, you might ask later how, what you love or what you don't like about the product, right, that you're building. But a lot of times it's very yes or no, or very much like a multiple choice, right? So you can't get these open-ended answers. Feedback is very open-ended. So it's kind of determining what kind of method are you using. Are you looking for feedback about the product, which can be very open-ended? You're trying to develop insights around the product, or are you trying to understand exactly where your product is at in a moment in time? And in a moment in time, you don't want to ask open-ended questions. You want to ask very much kind of standard multiple choice or yes or no questions that they have to kind of respond to and fit you into a bucket. So in that kind of PMF survey, we'd ask, hey, how disappointed would you be if this product didn't exist? Would you be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed at all, happy? And then they have to select one, right?
Yeah.
And you're hoping that most people would, like 40% or more, would select very disappointed. They don't have an option to choose another besides what you want.
No, that's I think that covers it. Hopefully, Michael, that answers your question. I do have, even though this is a technical forum, technical meetup group, I do like to ask all our presenters one non-technical question. It's a career advice question. Because sometimes we'll get some college students that join, some people early in the career. Maybe in this case, early in the career and thinking about getting into product management, which is kind of based on what you've seen work. Any kind of advice? It could be, any kind of advice to help
get into that space.
Get into that space, or to build the skills, or whatever you might have in mind to give them a boost along the way.
Start doing it now without somebody paying you for it, I think, is the biggest advice I would have. I found the most success in my career just starting to just do things. An example of this is like when I was in college, I wanted to get into investment banking. That was like my job out of college I wanted to get into, right? And I didn't go to like Harvard or Brown or like something that has like a good Wall Street, call us a Wall Street pipeline, right? And nor did I know anybody that worked on Wall Street. I got into Wall Street because I just started doing things. I started just trading stocks. And I started trading stocks in my dorm room with a little money that I had, right? And like building that skill set. I got good at that skill set, or not good, decent. I mean, I started trading in 2008. Everything was going up at that point. I got that skill set, and then it led me to one thing after another. I started working, asking questions to a professor about stocks I was trading. He said, "Hey, our university has an investment management company. You could intern for them and help them out." I started becoming a manager there. It got me contacts with people that work on Wall Street. I got an internship on Wall Street. I got a job on Wall Street. Same thing with product. I wasn't a product manager before this job. I just built a company and had to run product and had to learn as I went. I didn't know anything about product at the time. I came from finance, right? So I had to just learn on the fly. My advice to you would just be start building things and tinkering with things and doing things with no, like there's like a level of curiosity that you have to have. And so just be curious and start doing things, start wireframing things out, start building products, start building a portfolio and with nobody paying you, and eventually and share those things and connect with people about them, and it'll open up doors. So I think the number one thing about doing anything from my point of view would be just start doing it now without anybody paying or watching.
No, that's those are some good insights, and it kind of goes along with some of the other messages that you've had on how to create a great product. Is ship early. Just start doing stuff, and then meticulous, maybe not meticulously, but willing to kill puppies along the way. Start trim things off. That are not needed, but to start doing. That's great.
My dad used to say when he was like didn't know what to cook, he'd start boiling water. Because he's like, if you start boiling water, like something's gonna happen. Like just get in the kitchen, put a pot on the stove, put some water on there, start boiling it, and like you'll figure out what to cook. And so sometimes it's just like the initiative, just like start doing something, and it'll morph into something.
Nice. All right, maybe a couple more questions, and then we'll take a break and then go on to the networking section. So Roy is creating a B2B and a B2C product for the media industry, focusing on news. He's got a general question. How does a startup navigate integrating into risk-averse industries, convincing them to adopt or try a new approach, kind of generating business, general strategy on how to identify your Bs, the businesses that really need your product?
This is always the hardest part, and there's no sexy answer to it besides blunt brute force. Like, I talked to a founder a couple of weeks ago. He just raised $65 million for his business, Series B. 3 years ago, he had no clue what he was wanting to build. They were just iterating. They had no idea. Everything they were building was failing, and they had an idea of building something in the auto space. And what he did was he emailed 200 to 300 potential clients every single day for a month until he got something. And so in totality, he ended up in 130 days. He sent out 5,933 emails. Of those and personalized, so it's like one by one, right? Of those 5,000 emails, he's almost 6,000 emails. He got like 190 replies, like 150 of them were people telling him to stop emailing them, right? Of those other ones, 30 meetings came out of the remaining. And of those 30 meetings, one pilot came out of that, right? That one pilot, he flew, when that pilot said they wanted to do a pilot, he flew to them to take the first meeting. So he met with them in person, built a relationship. They decided to do a pilot. He went to that office every single day for 2 months, built the initial product. And eventually he got that first client, showed the success. So as a pilot, he's able to take that and market to other companies. And now they have hundreds of customers in that. It's kind of brute force. It's not like sexy or whatever. It's just a lot of fucking work. Like when I try to close a deal with the first bank, like banks are hard to do. They're also risk adverse. They're not really open to new technology. They're very heavily compliant, whatever. It's just like you're constantly just emailing and connecting and networking and talking to as many people as you can about your idea. as possible, because you never know who knows who. And eventually something will come of that. So there's really no like, don't optimize in the beginning, just do in the beginning, because you don't know what to optimize in the beginning. So I don't really have a way to say optimize your process. I would say brute force. Email, message, LinkedIn, follow, tweet everybody you know in that space, and keep telling them what you're trying to do until something happens. That's the only way the initial things get done. And then after that, you'll start seeing some momentum. You have some test cases. So that's how it works, to be honest. That's the behind every like $100 million company and $1 billion company is a founder who's just relentless in the beginning when it comes to like talking to people and connecting to people, emailing people, and annoying the fuck out of them. It just is what it is.
On the okay, one this will be the final one from Joel. Says it's slightly off topic. He's got a marketing automation product. He's maybe thinking of selling into car dealerships. Any advice on how to sell to a car dealership?
Car dealerships are great to sell into because they're everywhere. Just go to them. I sold to car dealerships. We just pull up on them and talk to people. We would call them on the phone. I would just go in there and talk to people. You're figuring out when the right time is to do that over time. Like when I was building Quest, it was like for bars, nightclubs, and restaurants. I learned a few things, like emailing them. They don't care. Like restaurants don't check their emails. No do bars, nightclubs. So like knew that wasn't going to work. They don't really answer their phones either. So I would just go there and like I would wait till they open. And right when they open, I'd be outside, because a lot of times it's not super busy when they're open. So like pull up in a dealership like on a downtime when no one's there. Like don't go on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or Monday or Thursday. Like go Tuesday or Wednesday midday when no one buys cars. Like, like at 10, 11 a.m. when no one buys cars. And they'll talk to you at that time because no one's there. That'll be the best time. And just do that every day. Again, it's kind of blunt force. And it's scrappy, and it's not sexy, and it's not scalable. But don't do scalable things in the beginning. You do very unscalable things in the beginning.
Yeah, you won't want to try to do that to find every customer after that. But to get the very first, just a lot of. It sounds like a lot of sweat, a lot of work, and talking to a lot of people, getting out there, hearing no a zillion times. Until you get a few maybes, and then hopefully a yes.
Yeah. Blunt force is the only way in the beginning. It's just unscalable blunt force, talking to people, not letting things in your way. There's a rule that I would say is ask for forgiveness, not for permission. So like a lot of that is just like doing things and like, hey, you can't do that. You're like, oh, I didn't know I can do that. You always have plausible deniability, right? Like around like, I didn't know I could do that, right? Like, so it's kind of a lot of scrappiness. So yeah, do that.
All right. So Brandon, thanks again. It was really great. Hopefully everybody was able to grab at least some insights from there. The session will be up if you joined a little bit late. The session will be put on YouTube and then linked to the event page, so you can go take a look at it. You can share it with your friends, other product interested people. Thank you, Brandon. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
So if you have time to stick around, not sure if you do, but we do have a second part, and anybody that wants to stick around, we'll do a little virtual networking. We'll come back in 5 minutes. I'll make everybody a presenter. You can turn your camera and mics on. Hope to see some of you. If you have to run for evening duties and to get something to eat, take the kids somewhere. Great seeing you. Maybe we'll see you again at the next session.